Welcome one, welcome all to the latest Blogging the Boys Roundtable. It is Tuesday, April 18th, 2023, 7:01 p.m. Central Standard Time. We apologize for being 1 minute late, but sometimes you got to live a little. We stream live every single Tuesday here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, and as of now, we think we're going to make sure we're, not collapsing there. The Blogging the Boys Twitch channel. So if you are a Twitch user, head on over to our Twitch page. We're Blogging the Boys over there and follow us there as well. I say us. My name is RJ Ochoa. With me, as always, you can see here, read these people all over throughout the universe, all throughout the universe. I guess is a better way to say it. The Blogging the Boys universe, that is the one and only Tom Ryle. Tom, thank you for joining us. You look debonair is the word that I would like to say for you tonight, Thomas.
Yeah, I felt colorful tonight with still maintaining the black of seriousness. So,
okay. Well, Sirius Black is a character in the Hogwarts or Harry Potter universe. I don't know if you knew that or not, whether that was intentional. If you flip those words on purpose or not. But either way, you kind of are the Sirius Black. That's the vibe you have around here, I think. I don't know if that offends you or not. So.
No, I like Harry Potter, but I'm not that up on all of the characters.
Well, if you're Sirius Black, Tony Catalina, who do you want to be? Who are you here in our Harry Potter universe here at Blogging the Boys?
Wow. Would I embarrass myself if I say I've never watched it?
I think you would embarrass yourself only because you should say you've never read it. They
read it, watched it, never seen any of it.
Award-winning books. But watch it, whatever. There's a new series that's going to be coming out apparently on HBO. Tony, so you've got some time to do your homework and either read the books or watch the movies. Brian says in our YouTube chat that you are obviously Hagrid. It's not a bad thing, Tony. Again, if you haven't read the books or seen the movies, you don't totally understand. But nevertheless, the Hagrid here throughout Blogging the Boys. The fourth horseman here tonight, Brandon Clements tonight, only known as Brandon, with Brandon Laurie having the night off. B1, the original. How are you feeling this particular evening, and which Harry Potter character do you want to be?
I'm doing pretty good, and I'm actually with Tony. I've never read the books. I've never seen the movies. It's funny because my wife is a super Harry Potter fan. She's so nice and does not, subject me to watching it or having me read the books. So I give her a lot of props there. Just not something I've gotten myself to dive into.
Well, apparently that's a popular opinion because Alex has taken 5 points from me for extending the Harry Potter bit way too long. But here's the thing, Alex. I was trying to extend it so I could check to see if we were streaming live on Twitch. This is our first broadcast ever on Twitch, so I was trying to buy us some time to make sure we were operational over there, and it turns out we are. So if you are watching us on Twitch, welcome again. Please follow us along our Twitch channel. We're planning on doing some more things there. Nothing's changing if you're a YouTube preferer, but Twitch now an option for everyone nonetheless. So thank you, Alex, for calling me out. David gave you 5 points, Tony. I'm assuming for having never seen Harry Potter or read it. Chase says, what's good, gentlemen? It's draft season LFG. Tom, we now have single-digit days left until the 2023 NFL draft. 9 days at our present moment. Some people get here a little bit later or listen to the podcast version of the show a little bit later. How are you feeling? Is it starting to feel real to you that the Cowboys are going to have, at least as of now, 7 new players?
Yeah, it feels real. It's getting to be that time of year, and kind of, I'm looking forward to it. It's always fun to try to speculate how the guys are going to work out. And as I've been saying for a while, I feel so good about how the Cowboys are set up for this draft.
Okay, well, you're not alone. Tony, I know you wrote recently how the Cowboys can go any direction that they want in the first round. It does kind of feel that way, and I know we've all got at least some of us here, I won't name names. I guess what this is going to be, the premise of our show tonight. Some of us have some anxiety about the Cowboys going in one particular direction, at least in the first round. I know that you are one of those, and so is Brandon Clements. But, I mean, overall, Tony, it's hard to envision a way that we're all upset a week and a half from now.
Yeah, that was kind of the premise of my latest article on Blogging the Boys. It would be really hard for them to mess up this draft, I think, because of what they've done in the free agency. They've set themselves up in a manner, they've taxed some needs. They've even put in some safeguards with, bringing in places and people in places that just gets them to this point where they're able to draft the best player available, whoever that may be, whatever position that is. So outside of doing something crazy, I just really don't see how they mess up the round one.
Brandon, do you agree? I mean, do you feel like anybody who is already, or anyone who is mad, we'll call it 2 weeks from now, is just trying to be upset? It's just looking for reasons to be upset with the Cowboys at this point in time.
Yeah, I agree with Tony. I think the Cowboys, just because of how great they've done, how active and great they've been making these great acquisitions throughout the offseason. I just think I don't think any of these draft picks are going to expected to make a huge impact. We don't need that. We have enough depth at this point. I don't think there's any dire needs. I think you're just filling out the roster with some depth pieces, and if we hit on a couple of these guys, it just makes the team even better.
You say that, but here we sit today, and we all view Deron Bland as one of the best, most important players on the team. When a year ago, to your point, Brandon, it's like fifth-round dudes, just whatever depth corner piece. You just never know, obviously, the way an NFL season is going to unfold in front of your very eyes. I mentioned it. I hinted at it. Let's go ahead and get to it. The premise for tonight, simple: best and worst case scenarios for the Dallas Cowboys throughout the 2023 NFL Draft. We want to know what would make each of you sing, soar like an eagle, and we also want to know what would make each of you condemn this team, decide to maybe root for the Philadelphia Eagles full time from now on, because you would be that upset with the Cowboys. Tom, you are our elder statesman by just a few months. So you will get to choose. Do we want to go north or south? Do we want to be positive or negative? What side of the spectrum do you want to start on? The best case scenario or the worst case scenario for the Dallas Cowboys?
I think if you go the best case scenario, it sets up the worst case scenario better to talk about. So that's the way I'd go.
All right, so we're going to start positive. Happy thoughts, good times. The vibes are all positive around here. The best case scenario for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, sometimes when we put this show together, we do this exercise. I have these guys send me what they're going to talk about beforehand. I make some notes. I was feeling lazy today. These guys know. Nobody else knows. They're complete and total state secrets at this point in time. Tom, you decided what subject we were going to tackle first. Tony, I would like you to tell us who is going to go first. Who is going to give us their best case scenario for the Dallas Cowboys? You can offer to go first if you'd like.
I want to hear from Brandon first. Let's get Brandon C out there.
All right, Brandon, what would make you feel good inside?
Well, I think at this point, I would like to see, maybe, it kind of comes down to players falling. I feel like if enough teams fall in love with quarterbacks, I feel like there's going to be a lot of positional needs that that are going to be untapped, and we'll have a chance of getting a really high-end player at various positions. So for me, if a guy like Jackson Smith and Jigba, so JSN or Quentin Johnson, if one of those guys falls to 26, I'm going to be very excited. I'll be very happy about that, just to add to the trio of receivers we already have in the building. And then also, I'm not saying this is happening, but if crazier things do happen on draft night, if Jalen Carter, somehow makes this crazy tumble, that would be something I'm not expecting. But if he's there at 26, I would lose my mind if the Cowboys didn't take him. So that's one thing. And then Kalijah Cansey out of Pittsburgh, I like him as he's a great prospect. I think people were comparing him to Aaron Donald. I mean, from the connections, the size, and everything. Let's pump the brakes on that, but. I see him as a top 15, player. And if the Cowboys can get him at 26, I'm ecstatic there. And then also it's just the cornerbacks. I mean, Witherspoon, I don't think he's going to be there, but if he falls, great. I'll take him. Christian Gonzalez, same thing. Deontay Banks. And then one of my guys that Tony even, maybe a month or so back, Joey Porter, I don't think he's going to fall that far, but stranger things do happen. So that would be something I would be very happy about. I think at this point, just take the best player available that's not a tight end.
Interesting. Well, you're also kind of tipping your hand at worst case scenario, I suppose. I think we're doing the exercise really well, Brandon, especially with the JSN. That's a little, dreaming, right? There's a definite dream element associated with that. But the Jalen Carter thing is like, oh, okay, Mr. Genie, I know I've spent my first 2 wishes. For my next one, I'd wish for 3 more wishes. So, you're getting a little bit greedy at that point in time. Let's see, Tom, of all of the, Tony, maybe you made a mistake by letting Brandon go first, because Brandon casted a very wide net. I don't know how Tom or Tony, you guys are going to separate yourselves in a unique way at this point in time. But Tom, what is the most practical scenario that Brandon unfolded in your mind?
I don't know. I think
they're all a little bit of a long shot in their own ways. That's what happens when you're picking at 26.
Yeah, and the thing is, Jalen Carter's just like ain't gonna happen. The wide receiver would kind of tickle my fancy a little bit. I think so.
Okay, so if JSN were to make it, I think we all agree consensus. I think we all feel that way similarly about Zay Flowers, even if he makes it. I think we'd all be satisfied with that to a different degree. He was obviously the first round mock pick for you guys last week on the roundtable. Tony, is there anything that Brandon said that you're like, yeah, I could totally see that, or do all of them just require a little bit too much ambition and hope in your mind?
Well, you know what? He is hopeful, which I definitely appreciate. But, sitting here after what happened with CD Lamb a few years ago, which nobody thought that was possible, I'm going to say I don't think we can rule out anything. I know some things are really unlikely, or, the Jalen Carter thing would probably be one of the craziest things I've ever seen. But, I'm not going to sit here and tell him that, Brandon, it's not possible until it doesn't happen.
I think the Jalen Carter thing, and obviously there are a lot of off the field concerns with him, and that's part of the discussion around him. If he fell to 26, I think that's almost too far of a fall to feel comfortable, right? Like, you're talking about at that point, okay, well, everyone is passing. There has to be some sort of universal understanding. Nakobe Dean a year ago, kind of different thing, but everyone in the same way was like, no, we're good. We're going to pass. We're going to pass. We're going to pass. All right, Tom, that means you're up next. Tony didn't know that by not going first, he made himself go last. So Tom, what would get you tap dancing? What would get you out of your seat, hooting and hollering? It doesn't have to be the first night of the draft, but it can be anything throughout the entire weekend. You also wrote about undrafted free agency. Obviously, the Cowboys, as you wrote, have 71 players on their roster. So 7, at least at the time that we're putting this together, are slated to come by way of the draft, which will leave 12 roster spots for undrafted free agents.
Yeah. Was reading some again today. It's something that's come up that 26 is with the draft class and the number of real first round talents that are out there. 26 is probably closer to a high second round pick, and I would like to see the things fall so that the Cowboys would pull the trade lever and trade back. And I even looked at a couple of teams they could trade with, I think, and set themselves up very well. They could trade 26 to Tennessee for 41 and 72 in the draft, which would be a slight win for Dallas, according to the traditional draft chart that I was looking at. Or they could trade with Atlanta and give up just a few points on the draft chart value and get 44 and 75. And that would give them an extra day 2 pick. And I think it would be entirely possible to come up with this haul. A guy who could be their pick at 26, and they might have to trade back up just a little bit to get him on day 2. But I think what I'm going to say, Steve Avila. I would love to see them get him. I think that would solve the left guard position at their own pick at 58. There's a wide receiver out of Cincinnati named Tyler Scott that might well be available for him to get, fortify that. With the early to mid 70s pick, Luke Musgrave, tight end out of Oregon. And then on the board I was looking at, when they got to their pick at 90, they could choose between Devon Achane or Tyjae Spears for their running back out of that. Achane out of A&M and Spears out of Tulane. And that, I think, would just really address what probably everybody sees as the 4 best spots. They'd have it done on day 3. And then day 5, they could go crazy, like get Tune out of Houston for a quarterback to develop. I would just be thrilled with something like that.
Tom, there's a lot of people who I think want to see the Cowboys trade back. It's not the sexy thing, but you're right. I mean, generally speaking, traditionally you have somewhere, between 20 to 24 first round players truly. And that's presuming all 24 go in a row, right? There's positional need that's factored into all that. I think, if the Cowboys are able to trade back and still, land, there's a variety of options. Sam Laporta was a name that went in a mock here on the channel that Brandon and not you, Brandon, but Brandon, Laurie, and Howman did that upset a lot of people because they took him in the first round. But if the Cowboys pick up some capital on top of that, I think we're all satisfied. I think they've earned the benefit of the doubt towards trading back. I don't think any of us expect them to trade up. There's no real need to at this point in time, unless we do see something like Brandon outlined, a JSN falling. Maybe you got to go up to 19 or something like that. So yeah, I think within your scenario, Tommy, you hope that maybe one of the quarterbacks falls. Maybe somebody's absolutely in love with Hendon Hooker and doesn't want to see him pass, or whatever the case may be. The Cowboys are right in that sweet spot, certainly. I want to catch up on the points to be handed out. I put David's comment up. He gave you Tom 5 for trading back. Brian gave you $1 million. I only have like a really thin paper, so don't really have the ability to do that. Brandon, Kevin gave you 5. Says, I hate the color yellow, but at least you don't have green on this week. So, good for you. Your fashion choice is getting shouted out. Trey Fargo offers Darnell Wright at 26. I do think that would send half of tonight's roundtable into a panic. I'm not a member of this half, Trey, just so you know. And Kevin offers that we can trade into the early second and likely get Steve Avila, who you mentioned, Tom, the guard out of TCU. Plug and play immediate left guard starter for the Cowboys. We all know if you could get an extra third with it and do it, I would go for the trade back. So it does feel like, no offense, Brandon, Tom's idea is winning right now. So Tony, you volunteered of your own volition to go last. So go ahead and save this party. What's the best case scenario for the Cowboys throughout the 2023 NFL?
Yeah, I mean, coming last. Obviously, Tom stole a little bit of the thunder, but we put too much work and effort into this for me to kind of veer off from what I said. So much like Tom, I am in the camp of trading back, but I'll get more specific with it. I think that if they can trade back to 31 with Kansas City and take Kansas City's 95th pick in the third round. So now you're sitting there in the top 100 with 31, 58, 90, and 95. And much like Tom said, I want Steve Avila. I know I'm probably mispronouncing that, but I want to get Steve Avila at 31. And then any combination of wide receiver, cornerback, tight end is my dream scenario. I know tight end, I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm not a big fan of tight end in round 1. But that doesn't mean
that's literally spoiling it. But okay, it's cool.
But if we can find a way to get Josh Downs or any Kelee Ringo or any of these guys that are there, because I much view cornerback and wide receiver as something that I feel comfortable heading into the year with right now, 2023, but also thinking to the future. And I know that's how the Cowboys like to draft. They like to think about the future and the present at the same time. So, there are ways that they can get this done without trading back, but I think trading back would be the best, most successful situation. And by trading back to 31, you still keep that 5th year option on the table rather than squandering that in the second round.
It was 10 years ago that the Cowboys traded back to 31 specifically and landed Travis Frederick, still kept that 5th year option. In fact, the aforementioned David Howman recently wrote about that particular draft, the 2013 draft for the Cowboys, and how it completely changed the way the franchise builds through the draft. Obviously, the Will McClay era, the Cowboys foregoing on the defensive tackle rich draft that it was. Everybody should go read that still. If you go to bloggingtheboys.com, scroll down a little bit, you'll still see it. He wrote it late last week. Okay, so Tony, who are the Chiefs coming up for? Since you were you kind of called Tom out. You said, look, Tom sucks. All right, I'm coming out. I'm getting specific. All right, I'm trading back to 31. So who are the Chiefs coming up to get them?
I mean, it's tough to say, but knowing the Chiefs and Pat Mahomes, I wouldn't be it wouldn't be a crazy thing for me to see them move up for one of these wide receivers. We hear some guys like Quentin Johnson kind of move. You hear about Jordan Addison. I know Zay Flowers could be the first one off the board, but some people saying he won't be. So I don't know. If somebody gets to the mid-20s, I could see the Kansas City Chiefs calling up. And again, I don't know if it's likely, but this is a dream scenario. This is the best case scenario. So that's where my head's at.
Quentin Johnston was the Blogging the Boys consensus pick. In case anybody doesn't know, SB Nation does a mock draft that we kind of slow roll out across all the sites. Obviously, every site picks on behalf of their team. When the Cowboys were up a few days ago, we discussed in our Slack channel, and we collectively voted for Quentin Johnston to be the Cowboys pick. Dave Halpern wrote about that actually today. Or was it yesterday? I forgot at this point in time. But either way, Quentin Johnston was the pick. That was not who I voted for. I think all three of you did. So your fate's in my hands tonight. I'll just say that. But that being said, Brandon, I want to ask you something. Let's live in Tony's hypothetical for a moment. And this is best case scenario. How do you feel? All right. Now, we all trust the Cowboys, right, to a certain extent, but we would all trade lives with the Chiefs. There's no doubt about that, right? There's zero question to that. How would we feel if we moved back and the Chiefs came up specifically for Quentin Johnson? Is there not a Cowboys fan that's out there saying, well, wait a minute, Patrick Mahomes wants this dude. Why are we poo-pooing? Why are we saying we would rather have this extra third-round pick? Like, is there a tiny little seed of doubt in your mind that that's the team coming up with you in this particular hypothetical?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I think Patrick Mahomes is always looking for some more weapons, and Quentin Johnson at that point at 26, even if it's the Cowboys pick or the Chiefs pick, I think it's a heck of a pick because I still have Johnston in my top 15 rankings personally, and I think anything outside the top 20 for me that's a steal. I wouldn't be too. I can't say I'd be upset. I'd be disappointed, for the moment until I see who the Cowboys picked at 31. So, again, I trust the process. I trust McClay and company. So I'd probably be disappointed for a minute, and then I'll probably be excited for pick 31 in that scenario because I'm sure they're going to pick somebody I think is going to be a really good pick. So the Cowboys in recent history have drafted very well. It doesn't, in every round they've, in the last 10 years, they've hit in every round, I feel like. So they know what they're doing. I trust the process, and until I'm proven otherwise, I trust them.
Tony, DJ Dog 31 has called you out and said that you have your mock draft website open. Is that true? Would you like to respond for the purposes of the integrity of the roundtable?
I saw that. I did not have it up. I just had it written down in my notes, like what number I traded for, just so I wouldn't butcher that. So no mock draft open here. We do it right off the cuff here on the roundtable.
I'm going to ask one final question before I kind of crown a winner for this portion of things, and then we'll get to the worst case. And maybe this is involved in the worst case. I recognize you guys are probably just focusing on the Cowboys, but last week on the NFC East mixtape, myself and Brandon Godden, we outlined worst case scenarios within the division. So from my perspective, what would suck if the Eagles or Giants or Commanders did, obviously, in the draft. Now, Kevin offers here in the comment section says, I still want Bijan, but I think the Eagles take him. And if they do, I am going to be a very, very sad camper. Are any of you bold enough, brave enough, maybe stupid enough, some people would say, to say, I want the Eagles to take 10? That's my best case scenario. Bring it. That's my fever dream. I want that to be a part of things. Or are none of you willing to tempt fate in that way?
Go ahead, Tony.
I'll just say, I think Bijan to the Eagles is probably my worst nightmare because that offensive line with that star. I mean, listen, I know Cowboys Nation don't love running backs and we're kind of burned from the Ezekiel Elliott deal, but Bijan Robinson, if you think he's generational or not, is still a stud running back behind that offensive line. That's going to be at least a 5-year problem for us.
Yeah, and I will add that having him alongside Jalen Hurts as a running attack does not make me happy at all. I think that really complicates the defense. You have to focus on stopping that run, and then that makes it better for Jalen as a passer. Yeah, that would and it's not only something that would make me unhappy. I do think it's kind of really possible too.
So then if we live in that hypothetical, I can promise you there will be Cowboys fans tweeting like, oh yeah, Eagles just did it. Everybody knows you don't take a running back that high, blah, blah. None of you would agree with those tweets. None of you are taking a victory lap around the Eagles, taking a running back at 10 overall.
No.
Okay. All right, that's well said. I think the person who had the best case scenario, and I'm biased, I've said that Jackson Smith and Jigba is my fever dream from day one, is Brandon. So Brandon, you're in the lead here. You have what do we have here? You have 22 points. Tony and Tom each have 20 points. I will say I never break it down like this, but Tony does have the lead as far as the fan vote. DJ Dog 31 has thrown in 5 more points Tony's way for his point about Bijan. I set him up, DJ Dog, so maybe throw a bone my way. That's all I'm saying. David also gave you 5 points, Tony, for integrity, for not having your draft board open. So I hope that you were telling the truth.
I always tell the truth. I can't tell a lie.
Okay, so worst case scenario for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to be honest. I'm happy that you put us in the order that you did, Tom, because this is more fun, right? Oh, well, best case scenario, Cowboys draft a really good football player, and they're super awesome, and they're fun to watch, and we all have a good time. No, I want the chaos. I want the anarchy. I want the crazy dispositions. I want people screaming and cussing at each other on the internet for 6 months in the fall while we're all eating chili. And do the clocks fall back this fall? Does anybody know? I know we're all in like an ambiguous place with that. Like, does anybody know for sure?
Yeah, I can't say for certain, but I thought it was over with.
Yeah, I don't know what the status of it is in Congress.
I really don't know. So if somebody knows, we're on the hunt for that information. But either way, what is the worst case scenario? Again, right now, vibe is good. Vibes are positive. We're all chilling by the pool. We got a drink in hand. The music is right, and we're just kind of feeling it, right? Like the song, the rhythm is hitting at the exact moments. We feel like the best dancer in the world. Nothing can happen that works against us until something does. All right. Something lurking around the corner. So what is it? What is that thing that sends you into a tailspin, that sends Twitter into a frenzy, wondering how we ever gave this front office praise to begin with? Tom, you set us up here to go in this direction, so I will set you up. Who goes first?
Let's let Brandon trot it out here. I want to see what he has to say.
First again, Brandon. Worst case scenario for the Dallas Cowboys. And since you're about to go, a measure of practicality. So unlike the Jalen Carter falls to 26 thing, these are all things within the realm of possibility.
Oh, of course. I kind of buried the lead a little bit earlier because everybody knows if you follow me on Twitter and just all these roundtables, you know, in the last few weeks, I am one of those very strongly against a Cowboys 26 overall pick being a tight end. To me, there's only one tight end that's even first round worthy in my book, and it's not the one that a lot of Cowboys Nation is salivating about. It's not Dalton Kincaid. It's Meyer out of Notre Dame. He's the only draftable first round tight end, in my opinion. He's ready to go from all perspectives. To me, he's even a more athletic, and we'll see what he does in his career. But he reminds me a lot of when Jason Witten came out of Tennessee back 20 years ago, and we saw how that worked out. I'm not saying he's going to get to the Hall of Fame, you know, like Witten is, but to me, he's the best. Dalton Kincaid is more. He's just a heavy wide receiver, is how I look at him. I don't think a tight end in my book is that important of a need for the Cowboys. I really do trust Jake Ferguson. I like Hendershot. McEwen's good as well. Do I think the Cowboys will attack that in the draft at some point? Absolutely. I am absolutely okay with that. Everybody knows my guy from Purdue, Durham. He's a fourth, fifth round guy for me. So that's where I'd like to go. But here's the other part of it too that I think a lot of people would agree with me on. There's 5, maybe 6, depending on how you rank them, tight ends in the second round. Second round grade. So you have Dalton Kincaid, I think, is a second round grade. I would say early second round. I think Sam Laporta, who's, you know, we've seen, I know Hallman and Laurie were, they put him in the first round. That's a little too much for me. But Laporte is definitely in the second round in my book. I wouldn't be mad if the Cowboys took him, which I have seen some mocks that have actually had him land in the second round for the Cowboys. Luke Musgrave from Oregon State, and then Tucker Kraft, South Dakota State, Darnell Washington of Georgia. And then this one's kind of on the fence. Some people really like him, some people don't. But it's Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan. Some people are kind of, some people have him higher ranked than others. I kind of have him as a late second, early third. So for me, I think you attack a different position because I think the tight end room, you should be able to take one of these 6 guys I just mentioned in the second round and be very happy about it. If the Cowboys are so set, on a draft pick at the tight end position in the first three rounds, to me, it's too deep of a position for me to go first round. There's other positions that you can attack. I just can't see a tight end in the first round. And if it's Dalton Kincaid, if I'm on the live stream, it's going to get real interesting, I think, is how I'll say it.
So, Brandon, for the purposes of holding you accountable, not that you're not, but just for the purposes, if the Cowboys take a non-Michael Mayer tight end in the first round, the draft's a failure in your mind. Like, I'm just like, how, because that's what you're saying. It's you're outlining this as the worst case scenario. So we don't want the, like, and I'm again not saying this is you, but like the homer, like, well, I'm gonna trust him. I'm gonna give him the no. Like you're saying now that it's a failure. This is worst case scenario, and you've got a lot of people in the chat who are supporting your case.
Well, I appreciate the support, and I'm just speaking from what I've seen and what I'm just speaking the truth. The tight end to me, that position it's not a premier position. I don't think there's not a superstar tight end. Maybe Mayer, I think, has the best shot, But to me, I can't take him in the first round. I think you can get at other positions. I mean, if Torrance, the offensive lineman out of Florida, is sitting at 26, and they take a tight end over him when the Cowboys are a Tyron Smith injury away from, the offensive line could be in a deep hole, I would not be very pleased about that. And here's my thing. I would say this. If the tight end position is done in the first round, it's an uphill battle for me to call it a win. They can still win me back because the Cowboys, as we've seen, you mentioned Deron Bland in the 5th round, they can make some picks that, later on in the draft where I'm like, okay, he could have been a 3rd rounder. We got him in the 5th round for projection.
But at the end of next weekend, if it's a non-Michael Mayer tight end in the first round, like you're drop, like if it's Dalton, like to live in this example, if it's Dalton Kincaid, you're dropping them a full letter grade, but like the draft can't reach A status for you. Like I'm just trying to put a measurement on how much of worst case you're defining this to be.
Yeah, I would say it drops me to a letter grade. I would say the highest I could go, if they go that position, is a B. That's okay. Honest truth on it. I think if they ace the rest of the way, I think it's good. But I think for me, a first round pick, I like to see the Cowboys hit on it very well. And if they don't, it could be a domino effect for potentially not so great draft. I'm not saying that's happening, but I would like to see them really attack a different position in the first round and then attack tight end later. I just think there's too much depth to go after that position so early.
Okay, so Kevin has given you 5 points. Says it's a deep tight end draft, yet no generational tight end at the same time. So taking one later would be fine. Rick has given you 5 points for speaking facts. David goes a step further and says worst, trade up to 20 for Kincaid. Obviously, that is within this point. Trey says +5 Brandon, no tight end in the first round. Brian, thank you for the super chat. Says worst case scenario is putting the season on the line, depending on Tyron to stay healthy all season, with he who must not be named being the alternative. We are doomed. I don't know if Brian's living within the Harry Potter analogy. So Brandon, Tony, I'm afraid that this reference is lost on you. This is a reference to Lord Voldemort, whose name you're not supposed to say, but we're brave enough to do that. We're all Gryffindors around here. So thank you, Brian. And yeah, I mean, passing on Osiris Torrance would certainly, to some degree, being willing to bet on Tyron in whatever likelihood that winds up being. Stephen Jones was on 105.3 The Fan today, actually, and was non-committal where the Cowboys plan to play Tyler Smith, but he did sort of infer that they want to play him at left tackle, which would obviously leave Tyron's position up for some sort of question. That's a topic for another day. Tony, you are team anti-tight end as well. So we're going to come to you next. I guess you guys can just keep kicking this thing if you want before Tom goes. So Tony, what's worst case? Is it tight end in the first round? Is it something specific? Like, make your point, fly your flag.
Yeah, I mean, I'm tight end. I already said earlier, and you talked about it, the article I wrote, where I think there's very few things they could do wrong in the first round. Like I said, I think they set themselves up to be really successful in a multitude of different ways. But one thing that I think right off the bat is a no-go for me, based on this draft and the way it's set up and what they have going on, is any type of trade up is not in my plans, right? I don't see them or a player that they could reach or be obtainable that would swing it so much that it would be worth trading capital for. Now, the worst case scenario for me would be if that move was for a tight end or a running back. If there's any type of, if they take one of those guys in the first round, it's probably going to give me a little pause. Like I already said, I'm not loving tight end. I don't love running back. I can justify it if you sit pat. But if there's any of that for moving upward and losing capital, like I talked about gaining a 3rd round pick from the Kansas City Chiefs, if they have to give up a 3rd or do any type of that stuff, I just think it's the worst case scenario for this team, and it's just not necessary.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's difficult to envision a scenario where trading up makes sense, right? Like I can't envision us hanging out, enjoying it, and that, the graphic is Cowboys who traded up and we're like, oh, it's 4X. And we all feel like it's immediately worth it. It's not at all. I want to live in something you said. We don't have to beat the tight end thing again, as mentioned, but you mentioned running back. Trading up for a running back would obviously be disastrous. Although there's a lot of people who are so fervently in love with Bijan Robinson that I think they would be willing to do it at this point in time. But say he falls, right? Like it's worth considering that discussion at this point. Bijan falls. So just straight up Bijan at 26. Is that in the worst case neighborhood? You know what I mean? Like, is it the first house when you turn into the cul-de-sac? Is it on the street in front of it? Or that's not even anywhere near worst case scenario in your mind? Because to some people, that's the best case scenario, is that Bijan makes it all the way.
it's a couple blocks over from worst case. It's not the worst case where because you're getting
same zip code,
same
zip
code,
zone. The kids go to the same schools, right? Yeah,
exactly. Maybe they go to the same middle school and then they go to a different high school, but my situation is Bijan's a talent that you would love to have, but I'm not going out of my way for it, right? He's got to be able to get on the bus and he's got to be able to get out and go to school from there. But no, and in all seriousness, like Bijan would be a great pick. I mean, like I said, it's probably not in my top 3 or 4 guys I would want in that scenario, but I'm certainly not trading up for a running back. I think we've already learned that lesson.
I'll ask all of you. So Peter Schrager is one of the NFL's foremost insiders. Obviously, everybody knows Schrager from Good Morning Football. I brought this up on this week's episode of the NFC's Mixtape, which drops tomorrow on Wednesday. He had Bijan going 10 to the Eagles, which you all outlined as like something you don't want to see sort of thing. He still had the Cowboys taking a running back in the first round. Which was interesting. He had Jahmyr Gibbs going to the Cowboys. So let's live in that world. Eagles take Bijan at 26. Cowboys take Jahmyr Gibbs at 26. Does anybody feel good about that? I asked I don't want to call him out, but I asked the aforementioned Dave Halpern about this. He said he wouldn't mind that. So everybody go, hate on Dave. But yeah, I mean, if the Cowboys not only took a running back, but took the second running back off the board at 26, I think we would all be kind of the goodwill would have been burnt up very quickly. I mean, I hate to be stingy like that, but it would really just kind of, they've come so far and it would feel like they just took such a step backwards. Is that not fair to say, Tom?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was kind of on the fence about mentioning that possibility as part of my worst case scenario because I didn't know if it was feasible. But yeah, if I'll go ahead and throw that in, if the Cowboys took like Gibbs in the first and then got out of day 2 without addressing any of interior offensive line, tight end, or wide receiver, I would be very upset. I'm not saying they can get all 3 of them, but I think they should be trying to figure out how to get some mix of someone to fill in at left guard and get themselves somebody that can push the wide receiver position. And this assumption that Ferguson and Hendershot are going to be the answer at tight end.
Tom.
Those guys don't have enough snaps. They don't have enough experience to be able to say, hey, we are good to go there. I think they have to be looking at a tight end. And that's why if they did take one in the first, if it was the right guy, it wouldn't crush my soul as long as they filled in on day 2 with some of the other positions. I do think it would be a bad idea to get out of the 3rd round and still not have a tight end. I think the big 3 positions for me for some time have been somebody at guard, somebody at wide receiver, and somebody at tight end. Those are the 3 positions you can push for a starting job coming into camp.
So, Tom, I know you and I are simpatico on this. We've talked about this on different shows in the past together about how the Cowboys historically have had no issue putting too much pressure on a player, right? Hey, Micah, you have to save us. That has been our worry for Micah Parsons, that they're not going to surround him with enough talent. They're going to say, hey, Micah, you have to do it all. We're going to pay you like the man. So you got to be the man. You got to be that guy each and every snap, each and every week, each and every game. And if you're not, then you're the failure, not us for not doing our jobs to surround you with talent. The past season, Tom, and you and I are on the same page here. What was our biggest complaint? They did nothing at wide receiver. They relied on the dudes in-house. What is our main criticism? The phrase they love to say the most, Brandon and Tony, we like our guys. We like our guys. They liked their guys a lot, right? They liked Noah Brown. They liked Simi Fehoko. They liked Dennis Houston was a starting wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys in week 1, and we all killed them for it. And now, in an indirect way, Brandon and Tony, you're like, we like Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot. We're good. We don't have to go at this adding a premier tight end sort of thing here. And I'm not saying that you guys are like, I don't want to draft a tight end. No, I recognize I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but I'm with Tom a little bit here. That's why I've come around on the I was with you guys. Didn't want a tight end in the first round, but thinking about it, that's a weakness right now, relatively speaking. It is a weakness. And so I do think it would be somewhat similar to what they did with the wide receiver position last year to say, we're good. Why? We've got Jake. Did you guys not see Jake Ferguson last year? Did you guys not see Peyton Hendershot with the hurdle on Thanksgiving Day? You guys are crazy for wanting another star, in this building here. So I'm with Tom. You guys stink, Tony and Brandon.
I will say this, right? I don't know if first off, I didn't think I would be the one that was like super high on Jake Ferguson. I thought people were with me on that. I thought Jake Ferguson's year 2 loop was something that we're all anticipating or excited about. But tight end, you say tight end's a weakness, but I don't know if I buy into that. To me, left guard is a true weakness. So if you're going to extend yourself or force a need rather than a best player available, it's to try to figure out the left guard spot for me. So yes, I absolutely hope and wish that they come out of this draft with a tight end. I don't necessarily or even enjoy the thought of that being in round 1.
So a couple of things here before we come to you, Brandon. Swain, I think Swaney, so I hope I'm getting this right. Swaney Boy on Twitch says, love that we got Twitch streams back for BTB. So Swaney Boy, our plan is to be doing these all the time. So anyone who hasn't, please go subscribe. I don't know if it's called subscribe. We're new here on Twitch, but do whatever you do on Twitch, please. Says, I love Hendershot and Ferguson being our 2-player combo. No love for Sean McEwen. I feel like we've got bigger needs right now. Trey says we have Henny, Ferg, and Sean wide tight end. I would posit that a year ago, again, it was like, we have Noah Brown, Smith Ahoku, Dennis Houston. Why do we need a wide receiver? That was the same kind of conversation that we were having. David says that I'm spitting fire. So what do you think of my fire, Brandon? I'm Bowser.
Yeah, I'm about to use the fire extinguisher on that fire. Wow. Jake Ferguson, to me, I feel like he's a starting caliber tight end. I've seen enough from him. I think he's got enough juice to be a solid tight end in the NFL. And also Hendershot, I love that kid. I think he's got a lot of talent as well. He came out of nowhere as an undrafted free agent that, he's played some valuable snaps last season. So even having him as the second and then Sean McEwen as a third option, I'm good with that. I'm not saying, and to your point, I'm not saying I don't want a tight end in the draft. There's a couple guys that I really like, and one guy is I'll keep saying it, Payne Durham. If you haven't seen him, go watch his highlights. He's a heck of a talent, and I watched him against my hometown team, the Syracuse Orange, and he just lit the fire on us. The Cuse won, but that's not the point. Durham, as soon as I saw him after that game, I was like, I got to watch more tape of this kid, and he just looks like a Dallas Cowboys tight end, and you can get him in the 4th or 5th round. But again, to me, it's not a super need. If you can get one in the late 2nd round, early 3rd, I'm okay with that. To Tom's point, if they come out of it with a tight end in the 2nd or 3rd round, I am not going to be upset about it. I just think, to Tony's point, if Osiris is there at 26 and you're like, nah, I'm going to take Dalton Kincaid, I think that's just not a good move. I feel like, because again, we're one injury away with Tyron Smith, who has proven not to be healthy all the time, away from this offensive line being a mess. So to me, tight end is it's not that big of a need. I feel like it can go in so many different directions, and even take an edge rusher that falls. I'd rather take an edge rusher that falls over a tight end. I just think tight end needs to be in the 2nd, 3rd, or even later rounds in the draft. It just doesn't make sense for me in the 1st round. I do trust the guys we have, because I feel like they can do it. I've seen enough of them on tape. I've watched these games every week. We've talked about it every week. I've seen enough of these guys where it's time to let them play, and I'm looking forward to it.
We will see. All I will say as we wrap up the tight end portion of this discussion is we've seen the Cowboys with some vigor attack positions of need on their roster, and even attack future positions of need like cornerback by trading for Stephon Gilmore. They've done nothing at tight end, and they didn't just forget that it existed, right? So I would just suggest maybe start to make your peace now, Brandon and Tony, because they have kind of almost purposefully painted themselves into this corner. They're like, we like this corner. We like, the paint around us, and we're ready. Come draft night, we're finishing the floor. Brandon.
Yeah, and honestly, I've seen different mocks, and of course, mocks are what they are. But I'm actually seeing Kincaid and Mayer going all the way, in the teens and the early 20s. So those guys might not even be there anyway. So this discussion would be mute. And to me, that would be the best case scenario for the Cowboys. Going back to that, take some tight ends off the board. Doesn't force the Cowboys' hand. They can take a tight end later. All is good.
Tony, you had a follow-up.
Yeah, I mean, for me, maybe the fact that they haven't addressed it is they're probably along the lines of how I think about and feel about Jake Ferguson, right? I think that he's ready to be the starter. Now, I think you can upgrade Hendershot. I think you can upgrade McCune. If there's another 1-2 punch and they can find a way to get a second or a third round tight end to go with Jake Ferguson, I mean, I'm all on board for that. So just listen, I'll get over it if it's a first round tight end. It's just not my ideal situation.
I'm Team Tom. And so, Tom, take us home. Tom, you're in pole position right here. We got 2 laps to go. You know what I mean? And you've got this. You've got the inside track. So what is your worst case scenario for the Dallas Cowboys? Do not fall apart now, Tom.
I just gave you my worst case scenario.
Tom, dude, you're playing with fire here.
Yeah.
What was
Bristol Dirt Race? Oof.
What was your?
Yeah. I said if they don't address interior defensive line, which is
you didn't have. Let's kind of restate it because we were still kind of hanging out on Tony's point. So now that the spotlight is firmly on you, Tom, you stole the show as like a side character, but now this is your episode.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So like,
But that's what I'm saying. The idea of if they did take the second running back off the board in the second round, and they just whiffed on interior offensive line, on getting someone to fill in at left guard, because you said it correct that Stephen Jones hints that Tyler Smith is who he wants starting at left tackle, which says to me, okay, maybe they're planning on coming in and filling that in the draft. And if they don't get a tight end, I think on day 2, and they don't address wide receiver because outside of their top 3, they don't have much. We know Michael Gallup has an injury history, and I would love to see somebody to come in and push Michael Gallup for that third wide receiver spot. If they whiffed on all of those, that would make me unhappy. That would be my worst case thing, is if they just kind of left those positions alone on the assumption they've got enough, because I don't think the evidence is there they've got enough at those 3 positions.
I think that's well said. And I think the spirit of your worst case scenario is what I would apply to anything. I would consider it worst case scenario if they don't draft a linebacker, right? If they're just like, oh, Leighton will be healthy, right? Like we re-signed Leighton, so like it'll be fine. And I'm not saying you have to spend a top 100 pick on the position. You obviously believe in Damone Clark. Maybe you believe in Jabril Cox to a certain degree, but like that's my general fear is that, and we're in a very different spot with this team a year ago where their top 3 needs were offensive line, pass rusher, and wide receiver. What were their first 3 picks? No, we didn't draft for need whatsoever. This was just total pure coincidence. Look at our sheet and everything. So that would be my worst case scenario, that the Cowboys wind up in some sort of corner that they don't want to be in by virtue of pinning themselves there. So that's that. Does anybody have anything else to say before we crown a winner? This is your last chance to kind of really state your case. Tony, did you raise your hand? I couldn't tell.
I'm gonna stand on what I've said. So
you're gonna hold. Interesting.
hold pat.
Yep, I'm holding to. Yep.
Tom, anything else? Even though you were upset that you had to speak a little bit ago.
I call.
You know what? Tom was the first person to really kind of not need more to say. So the roundtable winner tonight is Tom. Tom, kind of truest in his convictions. I thought Tony and Brandon, were just a little. You guys didn't sell me on the tight end thing. You know what I mean? Like, you guys are like, the fact that you guys are like, I'll be okay with it in the very end. That can't be worst case scenario. The worst case scenario has to be, I hate this team now. This was the exact opposite of what I wanted to see them do. I mean, it has to ruin your draft. That's the whole point if it's the worst case scenario. Tony?
If they trade up in the first round, that is like, I mean, I don't think I'll ever say I'll hate this team, but I might have to turn the TV off for about 30 seconds.
Brandon?
Yeah, I agree with Tony. Please, for the love of God, do not trade up to like 16 or something and give up so many early picks just to go get Kincaid or something. I'll be losing my mind.
Tom, let's see. Kevin says, yeah, Tom. So agrees with me. Brian says, Tom is the winner because I missed him and he wants an O-line as much as I do. David offers his congratulations to you, Tom.
Thank you, guys.
Trey says, #stop robbing Brandon. So Brandon, Trey feels like you were robbed. Tony, nobody feels like you were robbed. So
you win some, you lose some.
Yeah.
Tom, you haven't spoken. This is your moment, Tom. The floor is yours.
Remember, the key to winning this is always find something that RJ agrees with, and you're golden.
Wow. By the way, Kevin just proved you, Brandon, and you, Tony, to be like why you lost tonight. Kevin said, how do you guys give your worst case scenario after a winner is declared? Again, you both waited until we crowned Tom to be the winner to be like, oh yeah, well, this is my worst case scenario. Like, you didn't really stick
Run
to
the
it.
tape back. Run it back.
Well,
I said
I'm
it.
still on a tight end trade. You know.
I also think you guys can't be so close-minded and say, like, if they take a tight end, like what is the context involved with taking a tight end? That's what Tom's overall idea had, was if they don't address these things, it's
not a premier position. It's just not a premier position. It's just not. To me, it's you don't need it. You don't need it in the first round.
Well, say Steve Avila and Osiris Torrance or any of these guards that can come in and be a plug and play for them at left guard is there, and they're like, I think I'm going to take the second or third tight end in the first round.
What if Steve Avila falls and makes it to 58, Tony? You know,
I think that'd be in the best case scenario situation. You know, so
that would be the Cowboys just falling in and coming out smelling like a rose.
Let me ask you, Tony and Brandon, a question, and I would like you to be objective about this. Is Dalton Kincaid in all likelihood there at 58? Probably not, right? We no. Probably not.
I take him.
So, but I guess the question is, Steve Avila is way more likely to be there at 58 than Dalton Kincaid. Is he not? Yes. I mean, I think so. Like, again,
I bet
if
you
you're
they're
playing,
both first round guys.
I would disagree.
He's a top really? Avila is a top 50 guy in my book.
Well, that's that's not first round. I mean,
yeah,
I think he's middle second. Easily.
Yeah, but I'm seeing him a lot of high second round.
Who's the number one guard in this draft, do you think?
Yeah.
Osiris.
It's shifted over the last couple of weeks, at least what I've saw, is that people feel Avila, I'm going to finally say it correctly, Steve Avila is the number one guy in this draft.
Let's say this. Put a million jelly beans on this right now. Which player is drafted first? By whatever team, Dalton Kincaid or Steve Avila? Brandon, Tony? You're the non-tight end truthers here.
Yeah, it's Kincaid. I think he goes to the Chargers.
Could be Kincaid, really, yeah.
Okay, so the fact that you both believe it would be Kincaid doesn't at all give you confidence if the Cowboys take it.
But that has nothing to do with us. Like, so if I know you said it, and so not to put words in your mouth, but you said that you think that tight end is a sore spot or one of those situations need to be addressed. I don't necessarily agree that I feel that they're a weakness in that point. So you're just strengthening something that's at least middle of the pack worry for me instead of addressing what is a glaring hole at left guard.
So first of all, Brandon Laurie chimed in the comments as tied in the first round forever.
Not Laporta.
Let me ask y'all this. Let me put it this way. And I didn't mean to make this the tight end discussion, but it's just naturally what it became. So every year I mentioned another Brandon Gatton and I, we do the all NFC East team on the NFC East mixtape that we'll do at some point later in the offseason. And so we do the best quarterback in the division, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If we ranked them, right? If we went, we'll call it quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, offensive line, and then defense, whatever. And we ranked them 1 through 4, right? The Cowboys are easily 4th at tight end, right? Like that's easily where they're 4th compared to their division rivals, right? Like at quarterback, they're 2, right? Maybe you think they're 1, you know what I mean? Depending on where you rank Dak, their wide receiver group is 2, maybe at the worst, if you still believe Philly to be better or whatever. Their running back group, obviously you could argue is the very best, depending on how much you believe in Saquon Barkley. Their offensive line is nowhere near the worst in the division, but their tight end, they very clearly right now have the worst tight end situation in the NFL. It's based on optimism and hope, certainly, in Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot, but in terms of what it is right now, it's the worst.
No, I think they're the second best in the division.
You think they have the second best tight end group in the division when the Giants traded for Darren Waller this offseason and the Eagles have Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, that's true. I forgot Waller's there. That's my bad. Still 3rd.
I mean, my whole situation is like, all right, so now you're forcing a need there. You're saying the tight end has to be addressed. But I think
we acknowledge it's 26. We're not talking about they're not picking at 8. You know what I mean? Like that's part of the context too.
Okay, so if so, we all were submissive of Tyler Smith last year. If they come in and they stand on their beliefs and they draft a tight end and he's a star, like I'll eat crow. But we're also assuming that it's a tight end because it's popular right now. I don't know if it could be a guard, it could be a wide receiver, and we could be sitting here and this could be a moot point.
Tom, your thoughts on the last 5 minutes of discussion, because you've sat there kind of digesting.
Yeah, I got I'm gonna
agree with
go
me
back.
And Tony and Brandon are wrong, right?
I'm gonna go back and say that they've set themselves up that if they still do something early enough at the left guard position, it's not going to break my heart if they go a little too early on a tight end. Like if they do take one in the first round, if it's a good guy that's there and they don't make a reach.
Yeah, you know what? That's kind of how I feel, Tom. It's like I view this as like the Cowboys have saved up money to go on vacation, right? And they're going to go to the gift shop. That's what's going to happen next Thursday night. Are they maybe going to pay a little bit more than standard retail price for something? Absolutely. But you know what? They saved. They knew this day was coming. They specifically put themselves in this financial position to where this shirt costs $45. I can get it at home for $17.99. Are you just to save the place that I went? That's ridiculous. You know what? They saw that day coming. They put those pennies in the piggy bank. Wow. Tom, you were magnificent tonight. Tony, Brandon, you were very good. Tom is magnificent. Tom, I would like you to pick one of Tony or Brandon to make a random noise to send us off. And whoever you don't pick gets to pick the noise that the other person has to make.
Well,
has to be PG-13. That's a lesson that you learned the hard way, Tom. But so the person you're picking has to make the noise. So the person you're not picking gets to decide what the noise is. We want something creative. Person who is not picked by Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I want to hear what Brandon does for a noise. I want to hear him.
Tony, something creative, something cool, something awesome. You got this. We believe in you.
Give me a sad, long, drawn out horn if a tight end is drafted in the first round. The sound that you'll make,
like an announcement horn to like express your emotion. I kind of like this. Okay,
exactly.
Let's go,